Hi, I'm Elaine Harding. Welcome to my blog.stampwithelaine.com. For today's card, I'm using the Bouquet Blooms Bundle on page 167. This is a photopolymer set and it coordinates with the Gatefold Blossoms Framelits die. If you purchase both together, you will save 10%. These two dies are this L shape. It will die cut the leaf and also give you a score line as to where to fold your cardstock. The dies are designed and sized so that it will cut a 9 inches by 5 inches piece of cardstock. So this will automatically score and cut your decorative pieces at the same time. I've laid out my A4. This is a European size, so it's probably slightly longer than in America. So you cut the 9-inch first and then cut the 5-inch afterwards. It seems as though there's a lot of waste, but you can use the spare bits to cut out your flowers. The remaining dies are for these flower images. You have this large one which will fit over this image and 5 other dies which will fit over the various floral images. Now this one, you will see each of these dies here has a additional pointer, as it were, and this is so that you can orient your stamps. It will save you time as to where to cut them, so long as you stamp in the same direction as that pointer. I'll illustrate what I mean, and this is another reason why, if you haven't got a Stamparatus, why you need one. This is another use for your Stamparatus. You can do multiple die cutting. Now in the olden days, without this tool, you'd have to stamp your image and then position your die over the image before you die cut it, and you need to do it for each time you stamp. With the Stamparatus, you can cut a whole bunch of blanks like so, and then all you do is, when you're making your template, you can see on photopolymer stamps that there's an extra bit here on the stamp which is pointing in one direction, as does your die. That's what those points are for, to orient your stamps. So long as you remember which way that arrow is pointing, then all you have to do is just point your die in the same direction and it will automatically be the correct position as to where you die cut your images. I set up my Stamparatus. I had all my stamps aligned with the pointers facing up, and then I just inked it up and stamped it on my Stamparatus. Die cut them all to make my template. And then I added some arrows to show which way the stamp was pointing when I die cut them. When you need to stamp a flower, all you have to do is just slot it in. Ink up your stamp and then stamp. So let's gather the rest of the supplies. A very vanilla thick cardstock at 5 inches by 9 inches. In metric, that will be 12.7 centimetres by 22.9 centimetres. Then you need a piece of scrap that measures 5 inches across, and it doesn't matter what depth there is, but you need a piece to reinforce this bit here. I found that when I didn't have it, whenever you opened and closed it, it sort of bent the cardstock back. So it's best to have a piece that will reinforce it. I also did that because somehow you just can't have white leaves. You know, I wanted green leaves. Your matte layer for the inside of the card. This is in Lovely Lipstick and it's 3 1/4 inches by 4 3/4 inches. That's 8.2 centimetres by 12.1 centimetres. Very vanilla standard cardstock to go on top. That will measure 3 inches by 4.5 inches. That's 7.6 centimetres by 11.4 centimetres. From the 2018 to 2020 in colour stack, there are 40 sheets in the pack in 2 double-sided designs, and there's 4 each of each design in all the colours. Cut at 1 1/8 by 5 inches. Well, I've cut it a little bit longer so then I can trim it on the actual card itself, but it needs to be about 1 1/8 of an inch in depth. The inks I'm using are lovely lipstick and granny apple green, and lastly a returning colour, Coastal Cabana. And I've mounted my stamps on a block B, G and E. Some glitter enamel dots and of course your Big Shot magnetic platform. First you'll need to die cut your cardstock. Now this die will cut out the decorative edge for the top of your card, and this one will cut out the decorative edge for the bottom of your card. Now it's important to orient your dies in the same direction. So for instance, this part of the die will always have to be on the right hand side, and it is sized deliberately for a 5-inch width card. You can't make it smaller, you can't make it bigger. And you need to align the edge of the die with the edge of your cardstock. The top of here, this die here, has to be aligned with the top edge of your 5x9 cardstock. And then top cutting plate, and you run it through in this direction, going this way in your Big Shot. My sandwich is the magnetic platform, the base cutting plate, cardstock, your die lined up, and then top cutting plate, and you run it through the Big Shot. Once you've done that, you change dies and move your cardstock further up, and this time with the die, which is the floral die, face down, you need to orient this part of the die with the right edge of your cardstock. The reason why I've suggested that you leave your cardstock in the same position as the first time you ran it through is when I flipped my cardstock over and repositioned my die so that I was cut in the opposite direction so that the die would run through this way, I accidentally had it on the wrong side. I was actually changing the position of the scoring, therefore this flower here wouldn't shut on this end. It was out of alignment. It works if it's in the same direction, which is this way. So you still have this right angled edge at the bottom on the right hand side of your cardstock. So position it again. And if it jumps, or if the die is polarizing with the magnets underneath, then secure it with a piece of washi tape so that it doesn't jump, because accuracy is key for this gatefold to work. Then you put your top cutting plate on and run it through the Big Shot in the same direction. Next you want to cut a piece out of the granny apple green, and you need to make your sandwich with the magnetic platform, base cutting plate, cardstock die, top cutting plate, and run it through the Big Shot. So once you've done that, then you need to trim it down. Align this edge here with the 1/2 inch score line on the right side of your trimmer, like so, and then just cut, and that will reinforce the gatefold card here. Okay, now the reason why I said it was important for you to run the die, pass it over all the length of the cardstock, is so that you can establish the score lines here and here. So let's do that. You align the score line with the groove here. Use the light grey blade to score. Because this is down the bottom, we align it along here in the groove and score. Then you need your bone folder to reinforce the score lines. Adhere your cardstock to this portion here. I didn't give you a really precise measurement. It was because I wanted you to be able to trim it off once it was on the card. When you're adhering it, you line up the edges here and on this side so that they're accurate along the top edge of here where the flower juts out. Then fold it over and trim that piece off. Next I want to do a bit of stamping, so I've got my foam mat because we're stamping with photopolymer stamps and we need an extra cushion. So I'm going to stamp that first, the circular motif, and I need to stamp that before I glue the granny apple leaf on top. Because it's a big stamp, I'm going to take my ink pad to the stamp rather than the stamp to the ink pad. Just stamp on top there. I'm going to switch ink pads and stamp with lovely lipstick. Just going to stamp thanks. Bring in my trimmer, cut a bit piece off, snip a piece off, find the middle and make a fishtail. Switch ink pads again, and I'm just going to stamp this little leaf pattern here just to add a bit of interest. This is in lovely lipstick and I'm going to stamp Friend first, followed by Coastal Cabana, and I'm stamping, I've smudged it, so there's an emergency side. And lastly, Granny Apple Green. We can now assemble our card. This was my boo-boo. Glue that on top. And glue the inside so the leaves are at the top and this bit is at the bottom. So the last element is to one of your card blanks, the floral blanks, bring back your stamp apparatus, make sure that that's buttered up into the corner, pop your flower in, make sure it fits, ink up your stamp, and I want the lovely lipstick flower, so ink that up, pop it in the hinge, make sure it's in perpendicularly, and then stamp. Hold it there for a while the ink absorbs. If you're not happy with it, you can ink it again to make the colour more intense. So let's clean the cover and stamp it again. Okay, so once you've done your batch, you can take all the stamps off. But if you keep your template, you can still use the stamps again by positioning it in the hole like this for the next lot. So you can, so long as you've got your template, you can always take these off, because obviously you'll need your stamp apparatus for other projects. You can always reposition your stamp so long as you've got your template, like so. Okay, then you can even have it this way rather than the other way. This one's not right, it's moved. So let's do that again. So then you can reposition your stamps on it. And I've cut the template deliberately so that it will fit inside the box. And it's ready to go again. So let's shut the card, and then stamping dimensionals on the back, and you want it over to one side. Take the backing paper off and position your flower so that it's stacked on top of the other one and it's all in alignment. And the last thing to do is glitter dots. I think it's, I'm not sure if it's this one. Yes, it's a smaller size. Take the bone folder and curl your tag. Dimensionals on the back. Pop that on. Glitter dot to embellish it with. Before I go, I wanted to show you possibilities of just making a standard card with the same set without the gatefold. So this is with the gatefold, and this is as a standard card. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. If you're watching from YouTube, you'll find the list of supplies I use below this video in the Show More section. I'll also be listed on my blog at blog.stampwithelaine.com. You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest or Instagram. Thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll be back soon. Bye.